Gentleman yields back his time. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Waxman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There are two nuclear power plants in California. One is Diablo Canyon in Ms. Capp's district. The other is the San Onofre nuclear generating station near San Diego. And I'd like to ask some questions about the San Onofre plant. In February 2011, new steam generators were placed in service at that plant. This was a major capital expense. The project cost California ratepayers $670 million. This expense was large, but the new equipment was supposed to last 40 years. But on January 31 of this year, less than a year after generators were put in place, a tube in one of the unit's steam generators started leaking radioactive steam into the atmosphere. An alarm sounded, the reactor was shut down. The other unit was not operating at the time because it was being refueled. 6 months later, both reactors remained shut down. Fortunately, NRC has determined that the actual release of radiation into the environment was minimal in this case. Is that right, Dr. McFarland?
I believe that is correct.
After the January shutdown, NRC sent in an inspection team. They issued their report last week, and according to NRC's inspection team, after just a single year of operation, a large percentage of tubes in the steam generators had been worn down because excessive vibration was causing them to rub against each other. Last week's report found that this problem was probably caused by faulty computer modeling in the design of the steam generators and by manufacturing issues. The report stated, quote, "The loss of steam generator tube integrity is a serious safety issue that must be resolved prior to further power operation," end quote. Do all of you agree that this is a serious safety issue?
Certainly.
I see the members of the witnesses all shaking their heads in the affirmative. Does anybody disagree? If not, I'll assume that all of you agree. Dr. McFarland, can you explain why these significant design and manufacturing flaws were not detected earlier? What NRC oversight process was in place to ensure that the new steam generators would be safe, and why didn't that process identify the flaws before these steam generators were turned on?
Thanks for your question, Congressman Waxman. I'm still learning about all the issues and the technical details of the issues at the San Onofre plant. And I understand that this past March, the NRC issued a confirmatory action letter to require evaluation and repair of these steam generators prior to restart. And so the NRC will certainly ensure that the plant is safe before it does restart. As to why this was not detected prior, I will defer to my colleagues for much of that question. But my understanding is that the NRC did evaluate the plans for the new steam generators, but certainly I think we will be evaluating the lessons learned from this entire experience.
Anybody else want to answer?
Yes, sir. To add to Chairman McFarland's answer, I'm in agreement with her answer. I would note that the augmented inspection team report that you referred to that was issued last week also identified 10 unresolved items that will be the subject of additional follow-up. I would just mention, relevant to your question, that there are, of these 10 items, some related to design issues, control of original design dimensions, and adequacy of Mitsubishi's thermohydraulic model that you mentioned. So at least 3 of the 10, I think, have direct relevance to the question you asked.
But why didn't the process identify these flaws before the generators were turned on?
Well, I didn't mention another of the 10, which is the methodology itself for the review is another one of the follow-up, unresolved item for additional follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe, Congressman, you're asking the right questions. Question I've asked the staff myself. because I believe that if you look at what the licensee did in going forward with the replacement, it followed our process in the way it should have. Everyone did what they were supposed to do under the process. So when you have an outcome that's not satisfactory, you have to take a look at the process. And I think we should take a look at the process and see if there's something that we can improve.
Well, I hope that all of you will look to see how we can prevent something like this from happening again at a nuclear reactor. It's a relief that the shutdown of this reactor went smoothly. The defects in the equipment were discovered before there was a major release of radiation into the atmosphere, but it should not take a release of any amount of radiation into the environment before problems like this one are detected. If ratepayers are going to foot the $670 million bill for new equipment at a nuclear reactor, that equipment needs to be safe and last a lot longer than 1 year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waxman, would you mind if we allow Mr. Elstendorf to answer your last question, too, without objection?
Thank you, Chairman Shimkus. Thank you, Congressman Waxman. I just had the chance. I was at San Onofre just 2 days ago. I spent 3 hours there Sunday afternoon this past weekend, and had members of Congressman Iss's staff, Senator Boxer, and Senator Feinstein's staff with me to receive a briefing from the licensee about this exact issue. And I agree with everything my colleagues have said. I'll also add that I believe there's a very comprehensive, rigorous technical evaluation that still is underway to look at these problems. And I assure you that everyone shares your concerns on the safety aspects of this issue.
Well, I appreciate that. We want to be sure that it operates safely, and we don't want to have to find out that it wasn't operating safely after the fact. We want to prevent problems. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we